fighting is one of the things that you had to be concerned about back in the day, especially before the Strip was a big, huge apartment complex. And Tennessee's coaches had to be concerned about players getting in trouble. I remember there was one fight in which I can't remember his name, but he absolutely decked a player in intramurals. And he that was, do you remember who that was by chance? He
Tony
in intramural
McDaniel.
what's that?
Tony McDaniel, wasn't that the Tony
Yeah,
McDaniel
it
suspension?
was, and could have killed the guy. And okay, so there were all these old school problems, and one that Caleb is going to bring up is DUI and is drinking and is drugs. But those are kind of old school problems. Um, and I want to compare them to gambling. So let's use this as a backdrop. What's happening at other schools right now, Caleb, and with other athletes? Because while I think DUIs are on the decline, I think, and it's not, oh, I got away with driving home last night. That used to be my generation, which was awful. And goodness gracious, I would take back a million nights. Not a million, but so Caleb, we have issues going on now still with drinking and driving. What are some of the latest that have cropped up there?
So some of the latest are recently Georgia wide receiver Denylon Morissette was arrested early Monday morning for several charges, including a DUI following too closely and speed limit violations. And he's another Georgia player caught in a traffic violation, which there's been a bunch this all season. And again, we've been talking about it. Kirby Smart doesn't seem to care. But beyond this receiver, Denylon Morissette, who actually did play 11 games last year, we find out that Jalen Carter, this drag racing incident that got somebody killed in January, he was driving on a suspended license at the time. That came out yesterday. In between those two, Henry Ruggs, who we all knew had his incident 2 years ago, has decided he's going to plead guilty. He's going to face 3 to 10 years in prison. Some people are mad about that. I would say to those people, it was obviously Henry Ruggs did not plan to murder somebody. He should be in prison, yes. But what good does it do anybody to keep him in prison for life? Does nobody any good. Doesn't do the victims any good. It doesn't do society any good to keep him in prison for life when he wasn't actually. This guy's not. He's not a psychopathic murderer. He made a horrible mistake and a horrible decision.
Yeah, it was almost over the top, though, in terms of drive. I mean, if you've ever been to Vegas and been on the Strip, I mean, you just got to be an idiot to speed on the Strip because it's
156 miles an hour. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much traffic even at 4 a.m. I mean, that was as dumb as a DUI as maybe I've ever heard of. Okay, I mean, that was bad. So I would go harder on him. I've always thought that they should be on work release program and all the money that they make, NFL players, and they have. And Tony Robinson had to do this. He got off on work release to be a scab player, and as soon as the NFL strike was over, Tony Robinson, the former Tennessee quarterback, he had to go right back to prison. So then he watched the Redskins win that Super Bowl that year that he was a part of in prison. So I've always thought that what they should do is they should be on the work release program. They should be able to go out, make their money, and then all of that money goes back to the victims. And they have to
the
show
family of the victims. Yeah.
Yeah, the family of the victims, or the victims if they lived but they're severely injured, whichever the case may be. So that's what I would have done. But not to get sidetracked, I think these are things that have been somewhat addressed. I think these are things that are always going to be around in our society, and you should always be concerned about it. But
Kirby Smart clearly hasn't addressed it, but yes.
well, no, Kirby Smart had better, and I think that racing is as big or a bigger issue of DUI from a very good source in the Georgia program that I was told that's an issue because you have that little strip between Athens and Atlanta that it was almost like it was made for racing. I mean, it's just a wide open 4-lane road. It's separated by median. I mean, really, if you wanted to race, that's the ultimate place of any place I've traveled to do it. And I think, though, that Kirby Smart has a problem there, and I think that he will try to address it. But all of these issues, guys, as far as DUI racing, uh, doing drugs, the stuff that my generation did as kids that were stupid, I don't think are as big of a problem. And I'm going to tell you why. One, I can tell you my kids and their friends, they think alcohol is stupid. They do. They just don't think that it makes much sense. Now, I think there are going to be kids that you have marijuana that's legal now, and we may have some people that still think marijuana is actually absolutely a terrible gateway drug and all that. But I think that even players I talk to think that's a better option if you want to chill out on the weekend or whatever. So that you're less likely to get in trouble with marijuana, I believe. I think the biggest issue moving forward, and it's starting now, is by far gambling. So today's tough question. I'll lump all the old school problems together, Caleb, that athletic directors and coaches had to worry about. You got all those. I'll take gambling. I think gambling is going to be a bigger problem for athletic directors in the next 5-10 years than everything else combined.
So let's say up front, guys, what we're talking about is affecting programs, not affecting society. The old school programs affect society a lot worse.
Yes.
But I agree. Gambling is going to be a heck of a lot worse because there's no uniform standard. There's really no way to control it. There are no laws on the books right now at all to address this. I mean, every state has relatively the same DUI laws. You can't drink and drive or you have to pay a penalty. There aren't really any laws on sports gambling at all. And it's new.
Oh, wait, it's an NCAA violation. Giggle, giggle. So is paying players, but that never stopped anybody. I mean, it's an NCAA violation. That's not going to stop anybody.
No, and here's the other problem. If you crack down on gambling, and this is the big thing, which I think they should. They need to crack down. Dave, you and I know this. These 18-year-olds who get all this money, they're going to start gambling then under the table or illegally or having other people place bets for them, at which point they get in bad with really bad people. I mean, we know this. Which
is how the Tim Donaghy thing in the NBA went from a 0 to about a 12.
Yeah.
Or to use this analogy, 25 miles an hour to 150 miles an hour really fast, like within weeks.
Exactly. I mean, they're going to start like having, Tony Soprano place bets for them and making deals with the mob. And I mean, I'm serious. I know that sounds crazy, but that's what's going to happen. That's what happened. Look, we firmly believe Michael Jordan, that was a gambling suspension in 1993-94. He was tied to some really bad people that he was betting on golf games with. You don't think that's going to happen with college football players who are younger than Michael Jordan a lot of times, dumber than Michael Jordan a lot of times? And this is, and what happens when, drug lords, mobs, gangsters are connected to your football program because people are wanting to place gambling bets under the table and not get caught.
Travis says, come on, Dave, we were able to gamble in the 90s just as easy. Maybe that just wasn't my vice, but I didn't know how to do that. I could have gotten into a lot of trouble, but it wouldn't have been gambling. So maybe that's just me. I'd fill out a parlay sheet, and if I put $20 on it, that was a lot of money to me, so it didn't go any deeper to that. Now you have kids that have money, and you've got an app. That's so easy. I mean, you could literally do that in less than 5 minutes.